I'm muting all of our microphones just so that we don't get any feedback and that sort of thing. So if you need to get in touch with me, know that you can use the chat function or just unmute yourself. So we're starting in a seated position this afternoon, and you're welcome to close your eyes if that helps you to kind of block out all the other things in your room. And we're going to talk about a specific one of the niyamas. You're probably familiar with the yamas and the niyamas. It's the first two limbs of the eight-limbed yoga tree. And I wanted to focus specifically on Santosha today, which is often translated to mean contentment. And there's been a lot going on for me in my personal world that could lead me to be very discontented right now. And a lot of us aren't getting to do what we want to do when we want to do it. We're being denied things that we thought were essential to us. So I thought it would be interesting to have a yoga class today to look at deliberately practicing contentment, or to cultivate Santosha. So as you're sitting and just kind of being present in this moment, I'd like to present the idea that all of our feelings of discontent, all of our feelings of crankiness, have a message for us. And chronic discontent, so if this is becoming a chronic situation for you, it might mean that you're out of touch with your more authentic self. And so it seems rather paradoxical that the journey towards contentment starts by giving yourself permission to be not content. But we must stay fully present in the moment, even if in that moment we are frustrated or out of sorts or have anxiety or we're scared. So my advice to you, and this is something I've been practicing myself, is not to be afraid. This is very different, what we're doing today, than just wallowing in self-pity. This is a freeing you from the terrible burden of pretending all is okay, even when you're really not sure why it's not. I have a really dear friend from the yoga world, and she's a lovely woman. And she's been taking the pandemic very seriously. She has not left her house until Father's Day. She finally left on Father's Day. But you know, she's been studying very intently, and because, you know, her masters in India are offering a lot of stuff online, she's been very into what's going on in the yoga world. And when I talked to her, we're touching base as to how we're doing through this, I kind of felt like I wasn't measuring up because I wasn't studying with a guru from India. And I'm admitting to people that this is really hard. I'm kind of freaking out. So don't be afraid to not be content. But the challenge for us yogis is not to have rainbows and unicorns emitting from your bum all the time. The challenge for us yogis is to be present even when things are a bit uncomfortable. That's where we're going to play in our class today. So to begin, I'd like to begin with a bit of breath work. So again, a comfortable seat is very important. You may want to sit in a chair. If sitting on the ground doesn't suit you today, that's fine. Make sure that your hip joints are a little higher than your knee joints so your back can be in a neutral alignment. If you can close your eyes comfortably, it might help you to focus a little bit more. So I'm going to ask you here to inhale, and on the inhale, divide the inhale into 3 parts. So sip a little bit of breath, pause briefly. Continue sipping on the inhale, a little breath comes in and you pause briefly, and then finish inhaling all you can, pause briefly, and then exhale smoothly. So can we try that? Inhale a little bit, pause. Inhale some more, pause. Inhale a bit more and pause, and then exhale smoothly down. And try that type of breathing for a few more rounds. Now, if it's very difficult for you to find that today, just breathe in a way that's more comfortable. I want to just get back into our philosophy for today. So while you're doing this breath, I'll give you maybe 3 or 4 more breaths like this. Do the best you can to focus completely on your experience of this moment, not only the physical experience of being in your body in this moment, but notice the emotions, notice the thoughts, even if they're not all sunshine and rainbows. Okay, let's just take one more breath here. Okay, and then let yourself return to a normal, even pattern of breath for you, and just stay right where you are. I'm going to ask you to think of something, and maybe you already have it in mind, something that you want but you can't have right now. Allow yourself to feel the disappointment or the frustration, and just remember what this feels like. to be disappointed or frustrated or have another slightly uncomfortable emotion around wanting something and not being able to have it. Okay, we're going to come now to a standing position. So go ahead and release and come to mountain pose. And while you're mountain pose, I want to give you kind of the methodology for today. So we're going to come to the easiest version of whatever pose we get into. We're going to stop and breathe in that easy pose. And I'm going to ask you to remember what you wanted and you couldn't have. And then we're going to go a little deeper into the pose each time. And we're going to watch our feelings very carefully, just as an experiment. And we're going to try to see if we can find what's behind the uncomfortable emotion, the frustration or the anger or whatever it is. And we'll notice maybe how our feelings change as we change our positioning in the posture. So the first position, the first posture is mountain pose. Please place your feet actively into the earth. Your feet are parallel, some distance apart from each other. They don't have to be touching. Lift and spread your toes. And then kind of curl your toes into the mat, like a kitten trying to make her bed. And then stretch your toes back up. So you're very aware of the muscles around the toes. And then massage all the way around your feet. So you're pushing the outer edge, the ball of the foot, the other edge, the back heel. You're all the way around the foot, massaging your feet into the ground. Good. And then we'll come back to mountain pose. And then we'll try our methodology here. So think for a moment back to what you wanted and you couldn't have. Notice the emotions that come up with that frustration or whatever it is. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And then we're going to come into some simple work. I'm going to make my computer a little different angle so we can watch each other a bit better. From here, we're going to come up onto the balls of the feet. Know that you could have a chair close by to help you with balance at any time, and just keep one hand on the chair. So on your inhale, lift up onto the balls of the feet, draw the arms up to the ceiling, and then exhale, lower back down. And the challenge is to try to time the breath with the movement so your whole body is extending up to the top of the inhale, and your whole body is returning to the earth at the same rate at the end of the exhale. So there's a real feat of coordination that comes with this. And then if you find that coming up onto the balls of the feet is not working for you, you can just use the arms here. And then we'll just take about 2 more breaths. And then come back to mountain pose and just create some space for you to have an experience in this pose. So instead of anticipating what's coming next, just notice, take a snapshot of where am I here? Where are my feelings? Where are my emotions? Where is my physicality? All right, here's where we might start using our strap. So grab a hold of your belt, your yoga strap, whatever you have. Take your arms a little wider than shoulder width apart and just make the strap taut. So you could be using an old necktie, your house coat belt. If you don't have a yoga strap, that's okay. TheraBands don't work the best because they have stretchy to them. If you need a little bit more stability, take your legs a little wider apart, that's fine. And then when you're ready, we're going to inhale and slowly lift the strap up to about shoulder height. And then exhale, lower back down. Now this is a very simple version of this posture. Remember I said our methodology today would be to start with the most simple version and then stop, feel, remember what our frustration or what we wanted and we can't have, remember what that was, and then keep inquiring about what's behind that frustration. Why do we want what we want? Now I want to go a little higher. So I'm starting to advance in the posture. You can decide whether you want to come with me or not. I'm lifting a little higher now and then coming back down. Now here's some signals of where or why you wouldn't want to lift too much higher. If your elbows had to bend a lot or if you felt any clicking or strain in your shoulders. Now eventually we might lift the strap right up overhead, pause for a moment, and then see if we can drop the arms right behind us. Now, you may find you want to take the hands a little wider apart on the strap, We're still keeping the strap taut. And remember, at any point, you back up and go to one of the previous versions of the posture that left you feeling like you still had space. You weren't at the end of your rope, no pun intended. Let's try that a couple more breaths. So you can see we're really working into the shoulders here. We're really kind of building on the classes we did last week about shoulders. There. Okay. And then we can just let the strap go for a moment. And we're just going to have a little bit of free movement with the shoulders. This is something that's kind of fun to do. It can be a little bit frustrating, but sometimes deliberately creating discontent is a way for us to remember how to get to content. Remember, the theme of today's class is to find Santosha, the deliberate practice of contentment. So we're going to take our arms out. They don't have to be straight. They don't have to be like really lifted that high. And I want to try to pretend that we're in the high school band and we're playing the cymbals. So inhale here, and as you exhale, bring the hands forward and cymbal. Inhale and exhale. And you can clap if you like, just for fun. And then once you have this, remember, we're starting at the simplest version of the posture, which is a place we can stay if we want to. But if we want to, we can start doing something a little bit fun. So instead of doing both arms in the same direction, we can take the arms in opposite directions, but still be able to play the cymbals. So one arm is moving backwards and one arm is moving forwards. And it's very normal to get confused or lost with this. Deliberately find your way back to contentment. And then to keep it kind of fresh, switch the way your arms are going. So one's going forward, one's going backward, and you can still play the cymbal. Your arms come out front. And you want to keep the range of motion of your arms in something that's not causing a lot of clicking and clunking. That'll be different for every day, for every person. Good. And then let's let your arms rest, shake out a little bit. Let's go back to the discontent. Let's go back to something that we wanted and we can't have right now. And how did that make us feel during our opening meditation? How's our relationship to that shifting or changing as we come through these movements? I want to play with that sort of circle stuff just a little bit more, because it does really help us to unwind where a lot of our knots are. This time, let's try taking our hands and letting them rest on the shoulders. And we'll start the same way. As we exhale, play the cymbals with your elbows, and then inhale, open up. Now we're going to do the same methodology as we did with the previous arm circles, knowing that you can stay here in the most simple version of the posture if that's what you need, so you have enough space to work out all the complicated emotions you might be having. So we can start with one circle forward, one circle backwards, and still play the cymbals as the elbows pass each other. This is harder, really, because the closer we get into the central channel, into the heart of it, the more resistance you might find. And then let's start going in the opposite direction with arms. So if you're doing something completely different than what I'm doing, well, that's fine. We're just finding our own way today. And chances are, if you just start to be a little bit more playful and have some fun with this, your inner wisdom will find a way for us to unwind the discontent and come to a place of more content. Take a breath in and out. Okay, I want to focus a little bit more on the lower half of the body before we come into some different postures. And again, we're looking at the simplest version of this, and then we can start to make it a little bit more complicated if we want to. You may need a hand on a chair just in case balance is a bit of an issue for you today. So when you're ready, we're going to take one leg, doesn't matter which one you start with, lift it up. Inhale, point the knee out to the side, and exhale, point the knee across your body. Now I'm going to take the hands onto the hip bones and hold them steady. So it's just the leg that's moving. So this is a precursor to tree pose. But we're using the leg in a mobile way in hopes that we can start unwinding the root of our discontent to deliberately move towards contentment today. And that's probably enough. Let's go to the other leg. So as you inhale, we take the knee out. Exhale, cross the knee over the body. And the challenge for me is to keep the body steady and square facing towards the camera rather than twisting and getting, too much full body movement. And moving with your breath. So you're very disciplined in this. And then coming back to mountain pose. Now remember I said we could make this more complicated. If you need something that unwinds more deeply to get to the place where you can create space for your discontentment, then come with me to something a bit more complicated. If you like what you were just doing, you stay with that. You can always sit in your chair and rest too. So if you want to, we can take an inhale, take the knee out to the side, and then exhale, swing it right around so you're doing a big circle. It's much more challenging on the balance. Much larger movement. Try to keep the movement timed with your breath. Try to keep your hips square to the camera. Yeah. And maybe you take your circles back in the other direction. So notice as you come into the more complicated versions of the postures, are you experiencing your discontentment more acutely? Is the frustration or the fear or the anger a little stronger? And can you rest for a moment and create space for that? Be open to that. Because remember, paradoxically, the route to contentment is to allow the discontentment. We might try the more complicated posture on the other side, inhaling and exhaling. This could also be done seated in a chair. Just sit right at the very edge of the chair and then do the leg movement. So if balance is really off today, there's still an opportunity to challenge the hip joint a bit more. And I've switched directions with my knee. And I'm just going to go 2 more breaths here. And then come back to mountain pose. See if you can recall what it was that you couldn't have, that left you frustrated or angry or any other types of feelings or emotions, and can you open space for that? Sometimes it's keeping the dark monsters locked in the closet. The effort of doing that exhausts us. Once we open the closet and say, look at the mess, then it's not so bad. It's out in the open. It doesn't have the same power over us. I'm going to ask you to come to table pose now. I'm going to work with the chair for today in table pose. If you're fine on hands and knees, you might want a blanket underneath your knees to cushion them. And we're going to take our hands into table pose. And just as a little bit of a variation today, I'm going to ask you to take one hand. You can start with whatever one you want and turn it out to the side. So instead of fingertips facing away from you, turn the fingertips out to the side of the mat. You do that with both hands at the same time if your wrists will allow that. And then take a couple cat-cow breaths. So inhale, lift your chest. Exhale, draw the belly in. And you could be on hands and knees for this, or I'm using a chair today. We'll just do one more breath like this. And then let's see if it's available to us to make this a bit more complicated. Turn the hand right backwards so the fingertips are facing towards your body. Now you might only be able to do this one hand at a time, or maybe 2 hands at a time. We'll see. And again, take a couple cat-cows. Inhale and exhale. Notice the movement of the spine is so different with your hands in a different orientation. So don't force your spine to do things that you used to do. Ask your spine what you can do today in this crazy position. And then when you're done with that, you can either stand up if you're doing my version or push back into child's pose if you're on the ground, and just give your wrists some free ranges of motion for a few minutes. So if you're in child's pose, your hips are back towards your heels, your arms are outstretched, and you're making fists and stretching out the fingers and rolling the wrists, all different kinds of things so that you can be a little bit more content in your hands. And then let's come to downward facing dog. So downward facing dog for me on the chair will look a little bit different than for you. But tuck your toes under if you're in child's pose. Bend your knees, lift your hips up and back. And then we're all kind of together in downward facing dog. If you're in down dog, you crave a little bit of movement, like dropping one heel and then the other. A little bit of hip circle work here is fine. And then come to stand on your knees. So if I were down on the ground, if my knees were happy on the ground, I would be looking like this on the knees. I'm going to stand to do this posture and use the chair because today I'm not going to weight bear on the knees for now. So you can be either standing on your shins or standing on your feet. We're going to come into a posture called Yoga Mudra. Yoga Mudra was explained to me many years ago as a full body prostration that indicates as a yogi we want our hearts to lead our behavior rather than the intellect. And when we're taking this leap into our emotional landscape and trusting our yoga to help us find contentment, I think it's appropriate that we trust our hearts to lead. So you may want to grab your strap for this. This would be particularly appropriate if you ever dislocated your shoulder joints, even if when you were a kid, your shoulder came out of socket, or if you just find that your shoulders feel tight today. So you can use a strap. The other option would be to interlace the fingers with the palms coming together. But if that feels too severe for you today, take the strap. And I said we were going to start with the simplest version of the postures. So from where you are standing on your shins or here, inhale, lift the chest up towards the sky. As you exhale, hinge at the hips, bring the head forward towards the chair, a little forward to reach the chair, or the floor. Inhale, come back up through the strength of your legs. Exhale, forward fold. The arms lift up off the back. So coming back and forth a few more times like that. I'll just show what it might look like if you were on the ground, standing on your shins, inhaling, exhaling. And our intention with this posture is to really humble our intellect, shelve the ego for a moment, and be willing to learn, be willing to grow towards contentment. Let's do that for 2 more breaths. And then we can rest in the child's pose. Or if you've been using a chair, you can just stand in mountain pose, or you can sit on the chair and do seated mountain pose. So let's just take a little break. We've been working for a couple minutes now, lots of movement, and try a different type of breathing. So come back to your comfortable seat where you were earlier in class. That might be your chair or sitting on your props. And you remember the breathing that we were doing earlier was a stepped inhale. Let's do the opposite now and step the exhale. So we're going to inhale smoothly. And then as we exhale, we'll let a little bit of air go and stop. Let more air go and stop. And then let the rest of the air leave and pause a bit at the end of the exhale. So we're doing the opposite to what we did at the beginning. So let's try that for a few breaths. And I always have to remember it's not appropriate for everybody every day to do all this kind of breathing stuff. So if this really is uncomfortable, listen to your own body. Let's try a few breaths now together, stepping down the exhales. Okay, continuing with just a couple more breaths like that, please. All great spiritual leaders advise us to achieve, in order to achieve a contentment, one must release wanting what you don't have and accept what you can't change. So I'm going to ask you to release that breathing pattern for a moment. We're going to come back to it. So all great spiritual leaders advise us, in order to achieve a contentment, we have to learn to be content with what we have and not wish for what we don't have. So let's use that breathing technique that we were just working with to help us release a little bit more into the present moment. So inhale now and say to yourself, what I have is enough. And as you exhale, say to yourself, what I am is enough. Inhale, what I have is enough. When you exhale, what I am is enough. So could you please take 3 more breaths using that breathing pattern with those thoughts in mind. Right. And then release that breathing pattern for a minute. We're going to shift our thoughts just a little bit on purpose, because you see, the practice of contentment leads us to contentment. This is something we have to work at. We're not hardwired for it. That's why we have all these spiritual leaders in our world trying to help us understand. So let's go back to that breathing pattern. When you inhale, what I do is enough. And when you exhale, say to yourself, what I've achieved is enough. So inhale smoothly, what I do is enough. And when you exhale, step it down, what I've achieved is enough. Try that for 3 more breaths. When you're ready, we'll just bring back to mind that item or whatever it was that you wanted and you couldn't have, the feelings it brought to you at the beginning of class. Test it out. Test how it's feeling now. And then when you're ready, please come back up to standing position. And I'm going to demonstrate using a chair. As I said today, we were going to maybe start with the simplest of the way to do postures and get more complicated later on. So we're going to come into chair pose now, and I'm demonstrating with the chair. Maybe it would be better if I turned it this way. It might be more graphic this way. So come to mountain pose, and if you want to, you can use a chair as I am. You'll find it surprisingly challenging. And we're going to take an inhale, and as we inhale, lift the arms forward and reach the hips back to almost touch the chair. And then exhale, stand back up to mountain pose. Inhale, hips reach back, almost touch the chair, and then exhale, stand up. Let's do that for a couple more breaths. This is our simplest version that we can use today anyway of chair pose. So you could be using a chair, or you can be doing this without a chair, simple version. And then we'll make it just a little bit more interesting by adding more elements. So again, I'm going to be using a chair. You don't have to use a chair if you don't want to. Inhale, come into the chair pose. And I'm going to sit right down because I'm going to be holding chair pose for a little while. So if you want to, you can sit down or you can hold chair pose without the chair. On your next inhale, widen out the arms. Exhale, give yourself a big hug with the right arm on the bottom of the left. Take a breath in again. Feel your back body expanding with breath. And exhale, release the hands. The backs of the hands can touch. You can grab one finger, or you can bring the palms to touch. So there's lots of different ways to create the arms. I'm going to go with the simplest version for today. So you're still in chair pose. On your next exhale, see if you can lift your right leg and cross it over your left leg. And you can tuck your right foot behind your left calf if you have nice long bones. So I'm demonstrating eagle pose sitting in a chair, but you might be standing, you might be like this. Can you find a steadiness of focus for 2 more breaths? Can you deliberately look for contentment, all tied up in knots in your Garudasana pose? And on your next inhale, joyfully release and come back to mountain pose. And that might be seated mountain pose if you want to. Okay, we're getting ready to do the other side. And you might choose to stay with the chair version of that. Deliberately seeking contentment. Inhale into chair pose. Exhale, sink your seat right down onto the chair, or you could be just on your feet like I am now. Inhale, open the arms. Exhale, wrap them around with the left arm underneath the right. On your next inhale, you can bring the backs of the hands to touch, or you can wind right around into full eagle arms. Any version works. Simplest is maybe the place where you can learn the most. On your next exhale, we're going to lift up the left leg and cross it over the right. Maybe the left foot tucks behind the right calf. Maybe you're still seated in the chair. Wherever we are, deliberately seek contentment. Breathe in and breathe out. Holding space for all the complicated emotions and impact that this posture might bring. On your next inhale, joyfully break out, and exhale, come back to mountain pose. Take a nice deep breath in and out. And celebrate how that works. Okay, we may want to have a strap again. And I'm going to start with a chair version of this. You may feel comfortable being down on the ground if you know that your hips and knees are very, very happy today. But I thought in this practice to deliberately seek contentment, wouldn't it be interesting for us to go to the simplest version of these postures? So when you're ready, we're going to take the right leg, lift it up, point the knee out to the side, and cross the right ankle over the left thigh. Now, if you're very comfortable on the floor, you can come to this position on the floor with the right leg on top. And we'll demonstrate that in a few minutes. I just wanted to start with the simplest version of postures today. So I've got my right leg crossed over the left. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tie over the opposite shoulder. And take my right arm, internally rotate it a few times, just making sure it's fully lubricated in there. I think it should be. And tuck my hand up behind my back. And I'm hoping I can find the end of my rope or tie behind my back and take a hold of it there. I'm tucking the elbow right down towards the ground and close into the side of my body. With the other side, the left arm, I'm going to inhale, lift it up, get lots of length, even do a little half moon stretch, and then bend the elbow, take a hold of the strap or the tie. If your hands meet, all 4 fingers connect really easily, then you might not need a tie, but I always have to use one. So my top elbow is pointed right up towards the sky. And then from here, I want to really press into my sitting bones, even if you're using the floor version already, and open the elbows apart so that the chest has lots of room, lots of space. And take a nice deep breath in and out. And then let's release the posture. Come back to a neutral seat with me. And then we have a chance to come back and hold that a little bit longer in a minute, but I just want to try the other side in the simplest version of the pose. So lifting up the knee, turning the knee out to the side, taking the strap over the other side, rotating internally a couple times, making sure that that's an accessible movement for you today. And then taking the right hand up behind, or sorry, left hand up behind your back, find the tie. Inhale, lift up through the left arm. Little half moon stretch is fine, just to kind of really get length on that side of the body. Then bend your right elbow, take a hold of the strap behind your back. We're finding eagle pose with the chair at first. Take a nice deep breath in and out. And then we can release the pose. So we took the simplest version of the pose. Before we move into making things more complicated, take a moment to close your eyes and recall your opening meditation. What was it that was frustrating to you? What did you want and couldn't have? Does it have the same emotional charge for you now? Maybe it does, but isn't it interesting to play with the spaciousness for difficult emotions? Okay, I'm going to come down to a more complicated version of the pose. Doesn't mean that you have to come too. You could still use the chair. I'm going to use a blanket underneath me to help make this a little bit more accessible. So you see I've folded a blanket a couple times. From a seated position, I'm going to take my right leg and position it so that the knee is facing straight forward. I'm going to take my left leg, and I'm trying not to pull on my legs with my arms, trying to do this with the hip muscles on their own. I'm going to take the other leg and place it so the left knee is on top of the right knee, and my 2 feet are out. I look like I've got a whale tail down there. And that's no comment on my weight gain from COVID. It's kind of like a fishtail. So if you are not able to make this shape with your legs, if your 2 sitting bones don't stay nicely placed onto the blanket, come back up to the chair. That's why we have all these different options for all these different body types that we encounter. So I've got my left leg on top of my right leg. I'm going to take the tie onto this shoulder. I'm going to tuck the left arm underneath. Lift up, little half moon stretch maybe, take the hand behind. So exactly the same way as we came into the posture using the chair. And now we might hold here for a little bit longer. So it's important that you use the props in a way that gives you room to breathe. And let's go back to our little meditative sentences. I just want to check my notes to get them right. So on the inhales, we can tell ourselves, what I have is enough, and what I am is enough. Inhale, what I have is enough, and when you exhale, what I am is enough. Try that for a couple more breaths. And then slowly release. And we'll come to just a neutral seat. For me, that might mean my legs are stretched out in front of me. If you're sitting in the chair, just seated mountain pose works fine. And take a moment to let the pose completely dissolve. We don't realize that when we make physical shapes with our bodies, there's an echo or a reverberation through all the other layers of our human experience. And in yoga, if we slow our movements down, there's time for those echoes to find a more harmonious alignment within us. So it's not just about the muscles and bones moving. It's about all the other parts of us that come into shape. Okay, so now we can take the left leg, if we're doing the version on the ground, and point the left knee directly forward and take the right leg on top. Have I got the opposite side? I think I've got the opposite side, don't I? I think I do. Or am I doing the same side again? Can't remember. So there you go. Yeah, this feels like it's the opposite side, I think. So we want to make sure that our 2 knees are stacked on top of each other, the feet out, and the sitting bones even to the ground. If you have any uncomfortableness in your hips or knees in this position, you want to use the chair version that we did earlier. Bringing your arms into place. Finding some space, even if you're taking a more complicated version of the posture, finding some space so that you can have room to think, you can have room to process what's going on. And as you inhale, what I do is enough. And as you exhale, what I've achieved is enough. Repeating that a couple more times. When you're ready to slowly dissolve the posture and come to a neutral seated position, which might mean your legs stretched out in front of you or seated on the chair. Okay. Put the strap to the side for a moment, and we're going to work a little bit in table pose now. So you might want to have something to cushion your bottom, a blanket. We're going to look at upward facing table pose. So again, the simplest version of postures to start with. So taking the hands behind you, some distance back from your shoulders, feet firmly planted on the ground. We're going to come into a little flow here, perhaps, using our breath to help us pace. As you inhale, we're going to push into the feet in particular, drag the knees forward and lift the hips from the floor. As you exhale, lower down and swing your arms forward, engaging a long, strong spine. So inhale and exhale. Try that one more time. So those postures are pretty simple, not to say they're easy, but they're pretty simple. We can start making them more complicated, but before we do, recall the uncomfortable emotions you've been working with, the not being able to get what you want throughout class, and deliberately create space to be discontent, even in our practice of yoga. So we can take it a little bit deeper if you want to. As you inhale, you can lift up into the upward facing table. And as you exhale, you can lower, but lift the feet from the ground. We want to maintain really strong spine if you're coming into that exhale movement. If you're, really struggling and you're rolling and your back is rounded, stick with this movement with the feet on the ground. And let's go through that a couple more breaths. Deliberately holding space open for the frustration or the fatigue, or if there's fear or anger. And then releasing. Bringing both feet to the floor. Just going to come to face you again. And stretching the legs out in front of you. Let's have fun with our strap one more time. I'm going to turn the computer angle down just a little bit so you can see the leg positioned a bit more. So this is definitely something I want to make sure we're using the strap for. And I've folded my blanket up a little bit, so I have a little height underneath my sitting bones, and it just makes me feel as though my spine is in more neutral alignment. Without using my hands at all to pull on my legs, can you bend the right leg in? So there's some space here in between my bent leg and my straight leg. Find that nice straight spine. Inhale, lift up the left arm, and exhale, twist your body to the right and let the arm flop. Inhale, come back up. And exhale, twist the other way. Inhale, come back up. And exhale, twist towards the bent leg. Inhale, come back up. And exhale, twist the other way. Let's do that one more time on this side. So pretty simple. Not too many complicated things with the arms. Legs stay in one position. And then inhale back into a neutral leg straight position. Let the reverberations move through all the layers of your experience from those silly movements. And then we'll go to the other side. So same thing. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Trying to keep the spine long and strong as you rotate from side to side. And really the arms don't have a lot to do here other than float around and look pretty. They're not really getting you into position. They're just coming in as backup singers once you're on stage. Now that's a simpler version of this next posture. The next version of this posture means we might need the strap. I'm going to use the strap for sure. And we might hold the posture for a few breaths. If what we're going into doesn't look like it's a fun thing for you to do, it's going to be too much pressure, you're not going to have enough room to think, then do what we just did. Okay, we're going to take that right leg, bend it in, make sure there's some space between the two legs, and lie the strap around you. So one end of the strap is on the right side of you, and one end of the strap is on the left side of you. So it's all the way around behind you. Inhale up through your right arm and lean forward and place the right elbow as close to the floor as you can get. I can't touch. Some people can. And then take the hand, wind it around, tuck the whole arm in front of the right shin, and grab a hold of the strap here. So your elbow is pointing forward now. Take your left arm, wrap it around behind your body as far as you can, and grab the strap behind your body somewhere. Walk the two hands a little closer towards each other on the strap. Now, if all four fingers can easily touch, like in eagle pose earlier, in Gomukhasana, cow face pose earlier, well, of course you wouldn't need the strap, but for me, this makes it a lot more spacious. So let's go back to the left leg. What's it doing? The left sitting bone is firmly pressing into the ground. The left ankle is flexed and the heel is pressing down into the ground. And my chest is reaching out towards the left knee. It's a little bit of a twist, kind of that open twist that we played with a bit in the first version of this. So you're opening the chest towards the left side of your mat while the left leg stays anchored. The right arm and the right leg are having quite an affair out there, pushing into each other, stabilizing the right side of your body as well. Take a couple breaths. On the inhales, what I am is enough. On the exhales, what I do is enough. What I am is enough, and what I do is enough. And you can slowly release the strap, unwind your spine, and come to sit in a neutral position. That's a particularly powerful pose for me. And I think you may feel you have deeper reverberations from that pose. The strap should still be around behind your back. Bend your left leg. Leave a space between your legs. You got to have room to get your girl bits in there. Inhale, long left side. Exhale, forward. The elbow tries to touch the ground. Mine doesn't. And then you bring the elbow out to the side, wind around, so your arms kind of really internally rotated and trying to reach the strap back here. So I have to give myself a little help. There we go. I've got a hold of the strap. And then the right arm around behind the back. Again, it looks for the strap as well. The strap is taut between the two hands. Inhale, get length in the spine. Exhale, bring your chest towards the right knee. The right leg is grounded, just like we practiced on the other side. And then we might start opening the chest towards the right side of the mat. Breathe deeply and slowly and patiently. What I do is enough. What I've achieved is enough. On the inhale, what I do is enough. And on the exhales, what I achieve is enough. One more breath in and out. And then slowly releasing. Coming to staff pose for a moment. Sometimes I liken the intensity of my emotions to a storm. You might have a storm where I am tonight. And sometimes after I finish practicing yoga in this way, I feel like I'm in a calm after the storm. We've discharged a lot of that electrical charge behind our emotions, and they just don't hold us the same way. You may want to use your blanket to cushion underneath your spine if you're on a hardwood floor like me. And then let's come to lie down on our backs. Feet positioned into the earth. Gaze straight up at the ceiling or the sky if you're outside. Let's come into some simple bridge pose type movements. This is the one where you can take your arms back behind your head. So my chair is in my way. But if you want to, you can press firmly into the floor with your feet. Inhale, lift up, take your arms up and back. And then exhale, lower back down. Take that movement a couple more times in time with your breath. Just letting all parts of your spine have as much movement as its neighbor. And during your last couple bridge poses, maybe run this idea through your mind that it's okay not to be perfectly happy. Our asana practice teaches us that all moments are teaching moments. All the asana offer us a chance to practice contentment and to learn these spiritual truths. Please lower down this last time. Inhale, and as you exhale, gently lift your feet from the floor and bring your knees halfway closer into your body. Touch your knees with your hands. As you inhale, allow space for the breath to expand your body. And as you exhale, gently draw the knees in towards your chest. We call this openness. So inhale, legs move away a little bit. Exhale, they come in. If we can use these postures like opennasana to accept discontentment as part of our life's education, we can accept that we're ordinary. You don't need to perform all the time. Seek your own inner compass. And this is the message yoga has for us. Take one more breath in opennasana. And then release back, feet to the floor, and you can choose whether you'd rather stay in constructive rest or stretch your legs out into traditional shavasana. Maybe there are other props or kindnesses that your body needs. I think this has been a pretty intense class. Someone looking on without listening or feeling what you felt or heard might not realize how intense some of these movements were today. So as you come into Shavasana, let's go back to that last point, seeking your own inner compass. Why would you trust your inner wisdom? Or why would you trust your own inner compass? In yoga philosophy, we believe that every human being has a spark, a reflection of the divine within them. And when we practice, when we listen, and when we see discontentment as an opportunity to learn, we're working from this higher self. The process of following our own hearts or following your own law is called swadharma in yoga. When I had that conversation with my yoga friend last week about how she's surviving in COVID, it's important for her to follow her inner guidance, her own heart, her own divine spark. But it's also important for me as a yogi to recognize that I have a unique path. My path to learning and experiencing yoga might not be spending every day on Zoom calls with Indian gurus. That would be a wonderful way to practice yoga, but it might not be my way. And your way might be different again. Our swadharma is different. And that's because we have different work that we're meant to do here. As you rest, see if it's possible to surrender to that higher wisdom within yourself. To know that we're not just a physical collection of muscle and bone. To know that our emotions and our thoughts will have those electrical charges, just like a lightning storm. Sometimes it gets pretty intense, but then sometimes it calms right down. And whether you're in the storm right now or you're in the calm after the storm, it doesn't really matter to your yoga practice. Your practice, your success as a yogi, is your ability to create space, to experience the storm, and yet remain centered in your own heart. Let's just take a quiet moment now and see if you can experience for yourself in this moment this quiet wisdom, this peacefulness, this inner confidence that we all have should we choose to practice with. If you have more time this afternoon to stay with this practice, I think it would be well spent. But if it's time for you to move on to something else, please be gentle and patient as you bring your body back to activity. And I'll meet everybody back into the seat that they took at the beginning of class. As you bring your hands together at your heart, you may take a moment to notice your heartbeat and recognize the pulse of life within you. And connect to that aliveness. And honoring our journey towards deliberate cultivation of contentment, or Santosha, is part of our journey as humans. Let's celebrate this work we've done together by sharing the sacred sound of Om. I'm inhaling now. Namaste.